I started in 2008 in the deaf care space. Spent 20 years in the car business, 2 years in the copier business, done some little entrepreneurial things, always done something sales based. So in 2008, I answer a ad for cemetery sales, and I started $300 a week. My wife thought that I had absolutely lost my mind. There were people calling to see if I had truly lost my mind. And it's just something I started on the job, wanted to enjoy it for 90 days because it's near the end of the year until the first of the year, and I get quote unquote a real job. Well, that real job that I was waiting for never came because I fell in love with cemetery sales. Ended up spending 13 years in it, from $300 a week to when I left, having months where not commission, not sales, commission, 19, 18 grand as the general manager of a cemetery. Now, that's a long ascension, but what I did along the way is I found mentors. And one of the greatest mentors that I found out there was the late Monroe J. Evans, M.J. Edwards. And he said one time, he said, son, I built my business on serving the poor. He said, the Bible teaches two things. That's what I base my business on. He said, there's appointed unto you once to die. And he said, the second one, he said, the poor you gonna have with you always. He said, son, get you a business serving the poor. Now, this is from a guy that started out doing $299 funerals to a conglomerate now that I'm sure is doing 8 figures and above, and a time where he was loaning money to banks before he died. I didn't say bank loaned him money. I said he was personally loaning money to banks. So maybe there's something to this MJ Edwards, boy, find yourself a business where you serve the poor. So I'm in the deaf care space. I started out just selling graves, been some of the craziest places you can ever think of, selling graves. I've signed grave contracts on hoods of cars, in homes with roaches flying, in sometimes very upscale places, because I was in a cemetery that basically had been so white that when I started in 2008, I didn't even have a telephone. They had the phones for the other people, and I had to wait. So, but areas change, demographics change, and was one mainstay for a season in the African American community, which was ground burials, traditional burials. So I worked for a large group. That group had about 300 cemeteries. There was a season or two where I was in the top 10, regardless of where they were around the country, in the country, from profitability from a cemetery where they gave me basically no advertising. Most of the growth was internal growth, or we built momentum over time because I studied. It's a whole lot of crying days, sleepless nights, but we tried to keep burying, which was a mainstay in the South, to something reasonable. I had 1,000,001 corporate fights because I was the voice of the huge market out there that that was unspoken for. So, made it 13 years, went through COVID, company made a ton of money, made a lot of mistakes. Company's not even in business by that name, have a new name now. But the money I made in 2020, I could have made, I had months up in the teens, high teens, 20. I'd say 20 grand. And I could have made more because during COVID, I know I personally turned down over 100 services. I turned down many of my salespeople's services because COVID was coming so quick and so dire that we would have killed ourselves if we ran after the dollar. But I'm saying this. We were in serious discussion. I was always fighting for the little man because it's better to make a smaller margin of profit. I know things are rising, costs are rising, employment costs are rising, and everybody's got to do that. But I argued that in the African American marketplace, that the yearning to build pre-need sales, to buy a grave before time, is usually prompted in our community. It's a reactionary response a lot of times to a death in their family. It takes a little bit of shaking up to wake us up, or else we're going to put our money to Jordan's, cars, and other things. Big Mama and them said, boy, you better buy a grave. That doesn't necessarily transcend to their grandkids. So all of this I'm saying is, MJ had it. The poor will be with you always. Find a market that gets people to repeat their purchases. Walmart's one of the biggest businesses in the world. And they don't try to sell the Park Avenue crowd. They sell that to the everyday man. My talks and discussions with I was a scourge of the company because I always fought for the little man. But I'm in the top 10 as far as profitability. So I had something. But hey, they moved on from me. That's yesteryear. That's gone. They said, we're going to replace that Steve Smith and things will be hunky-dory. Profit has never seen that place since that day because they're going after the big and the mighty, and that's not who the constituency is. Many other cemeteries have followed the same model, and that's why cemeteries are on life support right now. I don't care how impressive. You say so-and-so over there making X amount of dollars at the cemetery. The clock is ticking. Sometimes bad decisions, greed, and being relevant is making the footsteps of cremation come ever so quickly. What funeral director wants to arrange a funeral and have the family barely making money, and he gets the family to spend $7 grand to send them to the cemetery, and they being charged 14 grand. Yeah, well, some has been business costs because cemeteries aren't a money trove. Believe me, there's a million things that can come up in one day at a cemetery that cost a ton. They're not a money machine. However, greed and some bad decisions over the years as far as marketing and being relevant has now made cremation the order of the day. The poor you'll have with you always. I heard someone do this tape, and they say China is becoming a power in the world right now because China doesn't try to sell the Mercedes-Benz crowd. China serves the poor of the world. And now everybody in the world is purchasing from China. You go to the dollar store, and the dollar store product you're buying says made in China. So perhaps Monroe J. Edwards had some. Boy, get you a business to serve the poor. And I think that's a good motivation for all of you all. Now, think of everything I said because it's kind of some experience and some reading and some knowledge that I just popped off to you. I'm going to give you the advice that Monroe J. Evans gave me. He said, boy, get you a business serving the poor because the poor you'll have with you always. I hope you accept this. Let's make some wise decisions. Be blessed.